views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the DNA of organizational excellence with Claudette Rowley. Conversations that are transforming the world of culture and business. Claudette brings fresh, innovative perspectives that push the boundaries of what organizational cultures can and should be. Learn how to catalyze your organization's workforce into an authentic, intentional, and financially successful culture. Now here's your host, Claudette Rowley.
Hey everybody, this is Claudette Rowley, and you are listening to Cultural Brilliance, the DNA of organizational excellence on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour and let us help you experience some groundbreaking ways to transform your company's culture. Twice each month, we have some of the foremost experts on organizational culture, helping you understand how to make a brilliant culture the rule rather than the exception. Today, I'm really excited about our guest. His name is Brandon Smith, and he is also known as the workplace therapist. Let me introduce Brandon. He is a leading expert in workplace communication and the cure of workplace dysfunction. He combines humor, research, and practical steps to help audiences and organizations overcome some of the biggest challenges facing workplaces today. He has been interviewed by NPR, Fox News, The Wall Street Journal, and The Today Show. And he combats workplace dysfunction regularly on both his podcast, The Brandon Smith Show, and also on his blog at theworkplacetherapist.com. And he writes about everything and talks about everything ranging from managing workplace relationships to leadership. And when he is not out fighting workplace dysfunction, he teaches at Emory University on topics related to leadership, communication, and healthy workplace dynamics. Welcome, Brandon.
Claudette, I am so thrilled to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad you're here. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too.
So one of the things I've been intrigued by, and I think listeners will appreciate hearing, is you're known as the workplace therapist. How did that come about?
It's a funny story.
Great.
In way of background, I have a clinical therapy background. So I have a graduate degree in clinical therapy. I practiced in the clinical world for a number of years, and then transitioned to corporate and got my MBA. So it's kind of my version of a Reese's peanut butter cup. Somehow it kind of works.
Yeah.
So in that way, I kind of am a workplace therapist. But the origination of that title actually came several years ago, almost 10 years ago. I was on a radio show for NPR. It was a regular call-in show in the southeastern region of the United States. And callers would call in about their workplace issues on a Friday afternoon. And I was one of the guest experts on the show. Well, there was another guy on the show with me who also called himself an executive coach, but he was everything opposite of me. He didn't really listen to the callers. He kind of yelled at them. And so one day I was explaining to people, what makes me different from this other gentleman is I'm more like a workplace therapist. And it just stuck. From then on, that's kind of how people started referring to me, and just became my handle.
I like it. I like it a lot. It sounds like it. When we're working in culture, which both of us do, a lot of it ends up being, in a way, that healing, right? That healing work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where see things differently.
Yeah, there's healing work, but and also, folks come into the workplace. They don't come in empty-handed. They bring all their bags with them. and so that makes it a little more complicated and messy. Can also make it a lot more fun too. Mm-hmm. So in that way, I guess we all need a workplace therapist.
That's probably true, right? We probably do all need a workplace therapist. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your business. How long have you had it? What kinds of projects do you work on? What's the focus there?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I've been doing this work for about 15 years now. And it's taken many turns and evolutions, but it generally today lives in three main buckets. And I would say all these buckets are within the realm of being a practitioner. And what I mean by that is companies, organizations ask me to come in and fix their problems. And so it can take three forms. One form is they'll say, please work with a particular individual or individuals and do kind of coaching work. This could be someone that's been promoted and they want to equip her with tools or him with tools to get to the next level or be successful in that role. Or it can be someone who is violating a lot of cultural norms. They're just breaking some cultural rules and they need this person to play nicer in the sandbox or they're going to have to find another home. So that's one hat I wear, the coaching hat. The second hat will be the team hat, where they'll say, please come in and work with this team, make them function better, create their own kind of team culture on how they want to operate. And then the third hat might be, please work with a broader set of our leaders and equip them with the tools necessary so they can lead our culture more effectively. And that might be workshops or kind of executive education kind of sessions. So those are the three general hats that I wear when I go in and work with an organization. Sometimes it's all three, sometimes it's just one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's about, that piece about team culture, right? My experience has been a lot of, teams may say, oh, we need team building, or we have trust issues, or they'll have a lot of different ways to describe issues on a team, or we're not very productive, we don't make good decisions. But it's really different when you work with the team's culture, isn't it? That must be a very fascinating way to approach that kind of work.
It is. What's different is because you may have two different kinds of ways you operate. You have the way you operate as a team when the door's closed, and then you have a way you operate with the team when the door's open. Because a lot of teams, particularly leadership teams, they want to leave and they aspire to leave that room as one team. So everyone's aligned. But when they close the door, they want to be really candid and honest and have some difficult conversations. So they almost have two sets of rules. What do we do inside the family, and then when we're kind of showing up as one kind of family unit. You could almost think of it as like mom and dad. Mom and dad are going to be aligned when they're talking to their children, but behind closed doors, they might have some disagreements on exactly what the priorities should be.
Yeah. And it made me think just this morning, actually, literally, I was working with the team, and what was interesting, because there was the team that usually is together, and then there was one additional person in the room who's a really great consultant who's been hired to help with some sales and operational issues. And he has tons of experience. He added a lot. But what I noticed is he left the meeting, let's say 10 minutes early, because he had something else he needed to do. And I noticed the whole room relaxed. Like it was actually palpable.
Oh, wow.
And it was interesting because I didn't get the sense people were uncomfortable really while he was there, because everything he was saying was on target. It wasn't like he was off base or anything. But what I noticed is when he left, I'm like, oh my gosh, these people just relaxed 50%. And so to your point about inside the room and outside of the room, right?
Really interesting. I had someone describe this to me this way a few months ago. They said, sometimes you meet those people that the room just lights up when they leave the room.
Oh no! Right.
We have some. Yeah. The room just lights up when you leave. Some people, the room lights up when they come. Some people, the room lights up when they leave. That's what makes culture so interesting. You add these pieces, and the person might have lots of competency and skill and knowledge, but they just don't quite fit right, or they're not quite accepted with the rest of the group. And that's what makes this more complicated.
It is. And, one of the things that when I was going through your website, which I really love, I noticed you had 5 principles, right? Your company, you have 5 workplace principles. And I thought it would be really interesting to start talking through these and learn a little bit more about them, because I thought they were so wise and so smart and, often so overlooked, which I know is why you have them right on your website.
Yeah.
Is critically important. But tell us, what is the first one?
So there's 5, and we can start with the first one on the website is actually not the one I think we should start with.
Okay, great. Where should we start?
I think so. Just to orient the listeners, all 5 are going to begin with the letter C. So that will help you remember these 5. So the first one I would start with is clarity. Okay. And why I think that's so important is because, so how it works for myself and my firm is we go in, and part of what we want to help clients achieve is clarity. clarity on what's going on, clarity on what they want to do, clarity on next steps. Mm-hmm. So there's no guessing. Why I like that one first is because I'm a big believer that that's the first job of any leader, is for her or him to drive clarity, create clarity. You can't give feedback if you haven't created clarity on expectations first.
Right.
And when people walk into a workplace, that's what they want. They want to know, what's my role? What's my responsibilities? What does success look like? What's the cultural norms I need to make sure I abide by or don't step on? Clarity is, if you can drive clarity, you can eliminate 50% of all dysfunction in the workplace by really good clarity. You can get rid of 50% of it. I mean, who doesn't want to do that?
Exactly.
So I would start with that one first, because I just think it's so important.
And that makes so much sense, right? Because we go into organizations, and whether we're consulting or we're an employee or a leader, and I'll hear things like, well, what? I mean, it should be clear. Well, isn't it clear? No, and then you've probably done this too. Then you go talk to folks in the organization or on the team, and they have absolutely no idea what's going on. So this piece around clarity is absolutely, it's just huge. It's really, really huge.
And it's really hard to do. It kind of ties to one of my favorite all-time quotes. I've heard it attributed to Mark Twain, but no one really knows who said it. But it goes like this: I would have written you a shorter letter if I had enough time. And it just hits this point of how hard it is to get things down to a simple elegance that people understand. And sometimes leaders think they nailed it, and then they communicate something, and then it's not really clear inside the organization. They don't really know what they're asking people to do. I often, like when I'm coaching people, sometimes I'll have a leader say, well, he just needs to be more strategic. Mm-hmm. And in that leader's mind, that sounds like a very clear directive: be more strategic. But what does that really mean?
Exactly.
What does being strategic mean? Because everyone has a different definition of that. So I think clarity is, while it's so important, I also want to honor it by saying it's really hard to do.
Yeah, it is really hard to do. There, as you said, it's a lot of work to boil things down to a really simple elegance. And, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive back into this and also talk about Brandon's other 4 principles for healthy workplace cultures. So you are listening to Cultural Brilliance, the DNA of organizational excellence. I'm Claudette Rowley, and we're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you searching? Looking for a sign? A message you need to hear? From the great unknown, from the most mysterious place that is the most familiar to your soul in the depths of who you are. The universe put someone here to talk to, someone God gave a blessing to, that you may find insight with. TheAngelLady.net, 1-800-323-1790.
Calling all ladies. Are you struggling with neck, back, shoulder pain, or postural issues? You actually might have a related bra problem. Talk to Maria Monti at the Healthy Bra Company. She is a professional postural therapist who offers custom-fitted, custom-altered bras in 2,500 size combinations specific to your body type, shape, size, anatomical features, and breast weight. Call Maria today to find out more at 360-815-3205.
What is holding you back from living the life you are meant to live? Why is it vital to believe in something bigger than yourself? Are you in physical or emotional pain? Tune in monthly to Vibrant Purposeful Living. Awaken the vibrant life within you with Lou Paradise and Dr. Pat on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Lou's passion is to help everyone experience positive solutions for life. Find out more about Lou with Vibrant Purposeful Living at LouParadise.com.
If you have been struggling with fear and anxiety, you know how debilitating these emotions can be. You constantly doubt yourself, you can't make decisions, and feel more and more insecure and stuck. Dr. Friedman Schaub's book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution, will provide you with the insights and tools to break through these challenges. Through a step-by-step process, Dr. Schaub explains how to resolve the subconscious root causes of fear and anxiety and build a strong foundation of inner peace and confidence. Visit www.thefearandanxietysolution.com and get your copy now.
Order your copy of Dr. Friedemann Schaub's The Fear and Anxiety Solution today. Visit thefearandanxietysolution.com for more information.
The Truth is Funny. Shift Happens with Colette Marie Steffen is excited to welcome Karen Benton as a monthly guest host. Tune in on the third Wednesday of each month at 8 a.m. Pacific Time to regain confidence and trust in your capacity to create change in your life, your health, your family, and your well-being. Karen Benton is a mother, nurse practitioner, certified body talk practitioner, Franklin Method instructor, and owner of Limitless Living LLC. For more information about Karen, visit KarenBenton.com.
We're back on Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm Claudette Rowley with my guest today, Brandon Smith, the workplace therapist. So Brandon, we were just talking about the importance of clarity and how challenging it can be, right? To boil things down to, I loved your example of, this person should be more strategic. What does that mean in general? What are the skills involved, right? What are the steps? What does that mean inside of our culture? There's so many aspects to that. So how do you, when you go into work with leaders and companies, how do you help them achieve that kind of clarity?
So it's really two things. It depends partly on what's my audience. Am I working with an individual? Am I working with a team? Or am I working with a broader organization? But generally speaking, I would say we're trying to get two things. We want to try and drive it down to the behavioral level. So it's clear what people are being asked to do. So for example, if strategic is the directive, what does that look like? What is the ask that's being made? So I think that's the first part. Drive it down to the behavioral level. Mm-hmm. The second part is also really hard, and this is really hard for leaders. Keep the list of things you're asking people to do simple, so it's sticky. So when it comes to, say, like values in an organization, try and keep that, my particular perspective on it, keep it to a list of 3 to 5. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the research that we see around cognition and what people can remember is once you start to get past 6 or 7, it's not that people forget 8 or number 8, number 9, number 10. They then forget the whole list. So I often, when I'm teaching communication classes, I say, whenever you're communicating something, you're either adding value or diluting from existing value. Mm-hmm. So in other words, more is not better.
Right.
I was talking to a client organization last week, and they're owned by a larger French parent company. And they said the issue with culture for us is our larger global parent company wants to help us, but they just create more lists of cultural principles. So we've got a vision statement, a mission statement. We got values lists. We got principle lists. We got behavior lists. We've got all these lists, and no one knows what to focus on. Mm-hmm. So clarity, not only is it behavioral, it's also simple. You need both. You need a limited set and behavioral, so it's sticky. Because the goal is you want people to be able to not only know what is being asked of them, at least from a cultural perspective, but also be able to share it with the person to their left and right. So,
and really be able to internalize it, right? Yeah.
Be able to internalize it, but also be able to recite it. So, for example, me and my family and I, my kids are getting older now, but we go to Disney quite a bit. And when you go to Magic Kingdom and the Disney World, you can grab any cast member and ask them what their values are, and they'll rattle off the 4 values. Simple and sticky. And they all know it. So it doesn't matter if it's the person, cleaning, taking the trash out, or taking your order at a restaurant, or you're queuing you up in a ride. They can rattle off the 4 values. And that's what you'd want for your organization. So clarity is an important piece to help us get there.
Got it. So what's the next principle we should talk about?
Oh, I'm a curious guy, so we'll go with curiosity.
All right. What about curiosity? What's important there?
So I love curiosity. Curiosity for me and for my firm means we're going to spend time really understanding, asking questions, just trying to understand the business, understand the people, understand the needs, what's going on before we jump to solutions. And I think that's really, really important in order to avoid guessing, which is also part of clarity, which we talked about earlier, but also for people to feel understood. And I think what makes curiosity such a valuable trait in the workplace is it is a true critical component to deepening relationships with others. Mm-hmm. When someone is genuinely curious about you, you feel more valued, you feel heard, and it makes you like that person more. And I find with our workplaces today, where time is everyone's most precious resource and everything is urgent all the time, there's a lot less curiosity going on. People are quick to make assumptions about others, and not a lot of folks are pausing to really ask questions. And so I think it's not only important for my firm, but I think it's important for us as human beings and leaders in general.
One of the things, I love curiosity also, and talk a lot about it with clients. And one of the things that has always struck me about curiosity is that you cannot simultaneously be curious about someone and judge them. And that when you, and I think that gets, that piece around judgment and assumptions, and I think especially when we're moving quickly, like you just described, it's so easy to jump to conclusions about a person and their motivation, usually negatively, right? So-and-so did this, they meant to do that, they tried to whatever, and we'll often find out it was nothing of the sort, right? It was, someone's got blown something up, then they act on it, they have this really strong negative emotional reaction. And I do a lot of teaching around curiosity, like you said, to really combat that. So, if we're just simply curious, we can have a completely different response.
Yeah, it's funny. You and I are talking about this like, well, of course. And the people listening to this are probably saying to themselves, well, of course, Brandon and Claudette. Of course, that's easy. Or I get that. But it is hard. I don't see people do it very well.
Yeah.
I was working with a leadership team about a month ago, and the CFO and the person in charge of kind of their footprint of their operations were not getting along. And it was clear on the dynamic. And so I let them continue their discussion back and forth for about an hour. And what I noticed was all they were doing was just continuously and loudly and louder restating their positions.
Oh, yeah.
Over and over and over again. Not once did one of them say, you know what, well, tell me what you're seeing. Well, let me help me understand where you're coming from. They didn't ask that question. And what makes curiosity hard is if we channeled our inner Brene Brown, she would argue, if she was here, she would argue that a vulnerability is an underpinning to curiosity. Mm-hmm. Because when you're curious, you're being vulnerable. You don't know what the person's going to say. And some people aren't comfortable with that. But she would also argue that vulnerability leads to curiosity, and you have to be curious if you want to be innovative. Mm-hmm. So if you want innovation in your culture, you've got to foster curiosity, or you're not going to have it.
Right. And that example you gave about the two leaders you were working with, right? It's the classic argument, isn't it? I'm going to state my position. You're going to state your position. And we're just going to continue to do that.
Yep. And whoever's loudest will win. Yeah, exactly.
Right. One person will overpower the other person, and the other person will finally just give up because they're too exhausted.
And that's kind of what happened. One person gave up, but they didn't give up their position. They just gave up that process. Okay. So they went back and passive aggressively still held their position. Mm-hmm. So nothing got resolved.
Yeah.
It seemed like it got resolved, but it didn't really get resolved. So you ended up with misalignment between two very important functions, which isn't a good thing.
No, that's not a good thing. And just using that as an example, like you said, curiosity can be challenging, but it could have changed that entire outcome. From what you've described, right? If one person had been curious about the other, then the other person probably would have gotten a little bit curious, and they might have actually gotten into a productive dialogue.
Right.
Yeah. And speaking of curiosity, there was something that I saw on your website that I was really struck by. I wanted to, and I thought listeners might be as well. You have something about people are wired on a spectrum between 99% relational to 99% transactional.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I mean, it's simple, but a really compelling way, right, to think about how we all fall somewhere along that spectrum. Could you talk talk with us a little bit more about that spectrum.
Oh, yeah. It's so cool. Yes. So for listeners, you can imagine, take your left hand and your right hand and stretch them out. So you've made a spectrum. So you're almost like hugging the sky. You've got this big kind of long reach. And on your right hand, that would be relational. And on your left hand will be transactional or operational. And you can plot people on that spectrum. So if we're very, very relational, we care about connection, and we're maybe highly emotionally sensitive and have high emotional intelligence, and we're all about building relationships. If we're very transactional or operational, then we're very clear about expectations. We're very direct. We're very candid. And we kind of don't have a problem kind of moving fast around that stuff. We don't worry so much about people's feelings. Mm-hmm. If you go too far on either side of those, you run into problems. So if you're a leader and you're all relational, but you don't have enough of that operational stuff, they say, oh, well, we like her. She's really nice, but we're really not clear what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
If you're all operational, then they say, oh, well, she's really clear and she sets great goals, but I don't think she cares about me.
Right.
So as a leader, it's somewhere in the middle. Now, here's where it gets really super cool. Well, we all have our own gravitational pull. So we all fall somewhere on that spectrum. And the goal is to get ourselves closer to the middle. But if we take that same spectrum and apply it to culture, you want to plot your culture somewhere on that spectrum too. And depending upon your business model, you might need to be a little more left of center or a little more right of center. So if you're in a manufacturing facility, then you might need to be a little more operational in terms of how you orient your culture. People still matter, but the operational stuff may matter a little bit more.
Right.
If you're in, say, hospitality, then the relationships and connections you build with your customers are critical to your business model. So you might want to be a little bit more on that side of the spectrum. So while it applies to both as us as individuals, it also applies to culture, which is why I think it's so simple, but also really compelling to think about kind of what's our business model and how do we stack our culture on top of it? And that's probably another good point around culture. Culture is just not a happy, touchy-feely thing. It's about helping you achieve your goals and be who you're trying to be in the marketplace, whatever that happens to be.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important point. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. The culture is not just a touchy-feely thing, as you were saying, and also about how healthy organizations are like healthy relationships. You were listening to Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm Claudette Rowley. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Your favorite Transformation Talk radio shows are now on Spotify. What? Simply search out your favorite host or show by name, tap the subscribe button, and boom. With over 150 million active monthly users on Spotify, Transformation Talk Radio is thrilled to expand our reach so you never have to miss an episode. Well, what the heck are you waiting for? Log into Spotify and subscribe now.
Curious about the meaning of life? Do you want to deepen your spiritual practice? The School for Esoteric Studies offers online training to spiritual seekers from all paths of life and individual coaching. Our courses synthesize Eastern and Western spiritual traditions based on meditation, study, and service applied to everyday life. The school also organizes group meditations each year to benefit humanity. Whether you're just beginning to reflect on the spiritual side of your life or are a more experienced spiritual seeker, the school warmly welcomes you to join our group. To learn more about our courses and services, please visit esotericstudies.net. That's esotericstudies.net. Take your own journey with the angels with Claire Candy Hoff's Heaven Sent Guided Angel Meditation CD. Letting go of concerns and living in the now. This beautiful CD walks listeners through practical exercises to help free them from the burdens, worries, and concerns of daily life.
Walking a quarter of the way across the bridge, you see a bright, emerald green light and sense a loving presence. This is Archangel Raphael's green healing energies, nourishing and revitalizing you. Take a moment now to bathe in this green healing light.
Giving you much more than just relaxation and stress release, this wonderfully narrated CD provides vivid visualization, soothing and inspiring music, and an angel's choir that will bring you peace, clarity, and a newfound awareness. Visit angelhealinghouse.com today.
Have you ever heard of the 90-10 rule? It goes like this. 90% of the time, no one is thinking of you. 90% of the time, everyone's thinking about themselves. And if you think of it like that, it takes the weight off, because now you're not being judged. I'm Megan Edge. I'd love for you to join me on Playing on the Edge Radio, Radical Change with Ease, with my co-host Dr. Pat on Transformation Radio FM.
We're back on Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm Claudette Rowley, and for those of you just joining us, my guest today is Brandon Smith, otherwise known as the Workplace Therapist. Brandon, before we jump back in, if folks want to contact you, find your website, learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The easiest way to do that, Claudette, is just Google the Workplace Therapist, and there's only one, so you'll find me really easily that way.
Oh, that's great.
That's the best place to find blogs and articles and podcasts and other resources for any listeners who might be looking for that. And then there's also a link on that site to my firm site, which is the Worksmiths, just like blacksmiths, but the Worksmiths. So they can get there that way. But Googling the Workplace Therapist is the easiest start. Okay,
great. Thanks so much. Easy is good.
Easy is very good.
Easy is very good, right? So what we were talking about before the break, you made a really important comment about culture is not a touchy-feely, isn't that nice kind of thing off to the side. It's really about helping you achieve your goals in the marketplace, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so and I run into this also in my work. How are we doing we being just the, kind of organizations and companies in the larger societal view? How are we doing in starting to understand that culture isn't just a nice to have, that culture is critical to success? What have you been noticing?
Oh boy. You know what, as you were talking, I immediately wanted to give us as in a collective us, a letter grade on that. And I would probably say our letter grade is maybe a C- or a D+.
Oh boy. Okay.
D is in dog, by the way, not B as in boy.
Got
D is in dog. So not very good. Not very good at all. I still think we tend to associate it with a happy score and employee engagement, for whatever that means, rather than we want to create an environment that's not only going to help people stay connected, but help us achieve our goals. I don't think there's enough of that orientation when the culture conversation comes up.
It's funny how a lot of the things that you're sharing, I've had, similar thoughts and experiences. And it's interesting. One of the organizations that I'm doing a project in right now, we've done a lot with, the culture was one that was high blame, low trust, things weren't functioning very well operationally, largely because there weren't systems and processes in place that needed to be there, but also people couldn't communicate because of the high blame, low trust. And one of the things that's happened is we really thawed that all out, build trust, decrease blame. And now we're actually having to go back in and shore up some of the operational pieces, because in some ways people got a little, and this is not necessarily, I think this is part of their particular journey, but got a little too relaxed, a little too friendly, because they started to really trust each other. And so we got to keep all of that, but we have to add back in some of that operational, excellence, right? So it's such an interesting balance we go through.
I think that's a beautiful way that, beautiful way that you articulated that. Kind of start with, internal, getting everybody aligned together, so they're connected and they trust each other, and then kind of basically ask the next question. Okay, so where are we going to go, and how are we going to get there?
And what are our goals, right? We have to keep that.
Yeah, what are our goals?
Standards.
Where are we going? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? Yeah. What are our goals? And what are the rules on the road that we need to follow in order to do that well? I think that's beautiful.
And there's been an interesting piece I've been hearing, and I'm sure you have too, in a lot of the great work being done on culture, people writing books, articles, TED Talks, et cetera, right, around certainly employee engagement, but this idea of being kind and bringing our best selves to work. And I'm all in favor of that. And I think that's incredibly important. And it's what you just said that I often am thinking, but what about standards of performance? What about accountability, right? It seems like we have to have that built in as well. That needs to be there.
I agree.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's where it's really tricky when you start to cross that line and the culture starts to feel like a quote unquote family.
Mm-hmm.
And while we love that idea and that concept, because it's like, oh my gosh, family, it's like where I belong and I feel at home. But sometimes at home we get a little relaxed. You know, we throw on our pajamas and we hang out on the couch.
Right.
And it's important to remind people, while we want that connection, we really want to operate like a high performing team.
Right.
I had a leader tell me years ago. He said, my organization's great, but I want to be really clear. This is not my family. My family is at home waiting for me when I'm done at work. This is my team, and I want my team to win, but it's not my family. And sometimes those lines get a little bit blurred, to your point. And then when it's family, it's harder to hold people accountable. It's one of the issues that often nonprofits have of the organizations I work with. That particular group is probably the most dysfunctional when it comes to culture, because the lines get really, really blurred around team and family. And then it's hard to hold people accountable, hard to kind of move together in a way you need to get stuff done.
Yeah, I really noticed that too. I used to, years ago, worked in nonprofits as an employee and then also have consulted in some. And there's also interesting power dynamics too, I find, speaking of family dynamics, dysfunctional family, dysfunctional power in some nonprofit organizations. And I think there is this, especially in tightly knit companies and cultures. I've had that same conversation where you're not a family, you're a team, right? We're here to perform in a certain way and we do care about each other, but we've got to keep there are behavioral lines you cannot cross here, right? We're at work.
Right.
And I think that's just a key point. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking along these lines, I mean, one of the things you talk about that I read was that healthy organizations, like a healthy relationship, right? And I think that's what we're getting at, right? There are boundaries, but tell us more about that. What's it like from your perspective?
Absolutely. So when I go into any kind of culture, whether it's a team culture or an organizational culture, I'm really looking for three things. So this is a great little party trick everyone listening can immediately go back and use in their own organizations and teams. I look for three things. I'm looking for clear roles. I'm looking for clear expectations. And I'm looking for balanced feedback. Balanced feedback loosely is more positive than negative. We're giving more kudos and appreciation than we are critical feedback. There's ratios out there that basically suggest that it should be closer to 5-1, 5 positive for every 1 negative. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, we want more positive than negative. So if we think about that, clear roles, that's so we don't step on each other's toes and everyone knows what they need to do. Clear expectations, we know what success looks like, and we know how we need to be operating to get there. And then third, balanced feedback. We're getting more recognition and kudos, but we're also getting corrective feedback. Mm-hmm. Well, if you think about any personal relationship with a significant other, partner, spouse, wouldn't you want those three things? You clear roles. We know who's going to take out the trash, who's going to do the dishes, who's going to make dinner, all those kinds of things. Clear expectations. We know what's expected of each other. We even know our love languages. And then third, balanced feedback. We give more positive than negative. In fact, the Gottman Institute, which studies marriages and personal relationships and partnerships around the globe, when the researchers sat down and listened to couples that have been together a really long time and seem to have a really healthy dynamic, and they coded how they spoke to each other, they found they gave each other positive to negative feedback at a ratio of 5-1. 5 positive for every 1 negative. The same ratio we see in research studying high-performing teams. Mm-hmm. So it's the same stuff. It's relationships. We're just talking about how we work better together, whether we're talking about our partner at home or our partner at work.
Absolutely. And I love the Gottman work. And one of the things that just struck me is so when you're working with a leader, And that leader, and if this has happened, I know this has happened to me in conversations with some leaders, and they say, why would I give someone so much positive feedback? Why would I give them feedback for doing their job?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm curious what have you found in that arena?
So for those people, they're going to be on that spectrum of relational and transactional or operational.
Right.
Like they're going to be super transactional, right? Operational. Right. Why do I need to do this?
Right.
And so I play to that. I say, because when you do that, you're creating clarity for that person. You're telling that person what you just did there was good. I want you to repeat it. It's behavioral psychology 101. It's Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
So if you expect the same operational excellence from that person over and over again, you need to tell them when they do something well that it was good so they know to repeat it. Otherwise, they're going to guess because they don't know. And guessing is neither efficient nor effective. And so for someone who's very operational and transactional, they understand that conversation pretty well.
That's a great way to put it. And so, thank you for sharing that tool, right, with listeners. One thing it reminds me of is a couple of years ago, I was doing a project with a group of newer managers. And we were going through something related to feedback, like you were describing. And a couple people were, because these were very scientific people, they were saying and research oriented, well, yeah, I don't get this positive feedback thing. And finally, one of them said, oh my gosh, I get it now. It's just like she was a martial artist, just like in martial arts, where we're told what we're doing well, so we'll keep doing it. Just like what you said, right? That it creates this clarity so you know what you're supposed to keep doing. And I think that's hugely important, for sure. Hugely important.
Absolutely.
So, which, makes me think about trust. And when we come back from our break, I'd love to dive into that a little bit more with you on our last segment for the show. So this is Claudette Rowley. You are listening to Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm with Brandon Smith, and we'll be right back.
Miss any shows during the week? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With the free Transformation Talk Radio app, you'll have access to all of the past week's shows in the palm of your hand. Yeah! Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio anywhere you go with our free app for any of your devices. Check out our app in the App Store and Google Play Store today.
Disease, one of the most dreaded words in our vocabulary. Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. Did you know traditionally we have viewed disease as a degenerative process? Disease is better understood when we view it as dis-ease in the human body. Dis-ease means without ease. Health is not merely the absence of disease, it's when every part of the body works together effortlessly. Relaxed and at ease. It's that relaxed state that lets energy flow in waves through and around the entire body. Every organ has an electrical charge, and when overcharged or undercharged, dis-ease occurs. And it is an effort to go through our day. We are able to determine the exact dis-ease of the body and design a specific solution to correct the nutritional imbalance. Contact us at 888-777-4232. That's 888-777-4232. And visit us at maryjanemack.com.
What is holding you back from living the life you are meant to live? Why is it vital to believe in something bigger than yourself? Are you in physical or emotional pain? Tune in monthly to Vibrant Purposeful Living. Awaken the vibrant life within you with Lou Paradise and Dr. Pat on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Lou's passion is to help everyone experience positive solutions for life. Find out more about Lou with Vibrant Purposeful Living at LouParadise.com.
Tune in to The Truth is Funny with Colette Steffen each Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This hit show will have you thinking outside the box and riding the wave of infinite potential. Join Colette on the Higher Self Network, inspiring listeners to shine their brilliance and ensure success while roaring with laughter as they recognize the humor of the giant cosmic joke. Visit thetruthisfunny.com.
How often do you find yourself wondering, why me? Learn a new shift in perspective to see how everything that takes place in your life is actually working for you and shifting you towards your own enlightenment. Tune in to Blank Enlightenment Radio with Misty Thompson each month on transformationtalkradio.com. For more, visit MistyMThompson.com. That's MistyMThompson.com.
If you have been struggling with fear and anxiety, you know how debilitating these emotions can be. You constantly doubt yourself. You can't make decisions and feel more and more insecure and stuck. Dr. Friedemann Schaub's book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution, will provide you with the insights and tools to break through these challenges. Through a step-by-step process, Dr. Schaub explains how to resolve the subconscious root causes of fear and anxiety and build a strong foundation of inner peace and confidence. Visit www.thefearandanxietysolution.com and get your copy now.
Order your copy of Dr. Friedemann Schaub's The Fear and Anxiety Solution today. Visit thefearandanxietysolution.com for more information.
Hi, we're back on Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm Claudette Rowley here with Brandon Smith today. Brandon, just one more time for listeners, what is the best way for them to find out more about you?
So you can Google the workplace therapist. So just go into Google, type in the workplace therapist or workplace therapist, and you'll find me. I'm the only one. And on that site, there's blogs and podcasts and articles and resources to help you as a leader. And then my sister site is the Worksmiths, and you can get there off of the workplace therapist. And the Worksmiths, just like blacksmiths, that's where where I put all of my work that I do, which is my coaching work and my team work and my executive education work and culture work. So you can learn more about my services on that site. So those are two different places people can go to get resources they need.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So right before the break, started to touch on, we were talking about, high performing teams and 5 positives for every negative or constructive piece of feedback, which led me to thinking about trust, right? Which is, as we know, just the cornerstone of any high performing culture. So when you're working with organizations, how are you defining trust?
Okay. So listeners are going to have to try and draw this in their mind.
Okay.
But I came up about 10 years ago with a trust formula that I think is simple, but helps kind of get the point. So if you're trying to create trust or build trust with another person, or even as a leader trying to get trust from your organization, you can think about it as this mathematical equation. So in parentheses, so you're just like any kind of mathematical equation where you're going to multiply something in parentheses, imagine parentheses. Inside of that would be authenticity plus vulnerability. And you take whatever the sum of that is, of authenticity plus vulnerability, and you multiply it times credibility. And that gets you trust.
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
When I first created the formula, Claudette, it didn't look like that. It was not a good formula. I made it authenticity plus vulnerability plus credibility, and it blew up. Because you could have, in that older formula, you could have 0 credibility and still come out with a positive trust quotient. And that's not how trust works.
Right.
So, and the same is true on the other side. Authenticity and vulnerability could go to 0, but you could still have positive trust because you've got high credibility. That's not really how trust works either. You can have the fanciest resume in the world and the greatest title, but if you're showing up as plastic or acting like a politician, people aren't going to trust you. So that's where the formula really evolved into authenticity plus vulnerability in parentheses times credibility gets us trust. So it's a great way for people to ask themselves, am I showing up in an authentic way at work? Am I being vulnerable? Am I asking for help? Am I sharing a half-baked idea? Am I doing those kinds of things? Am I being curious? And then credibility. What are some things I can do to build credibility with others? And that can be anything as big as being reliable over time, or as simple as being super responsive when someone sends you an email. I have a good friend of mine who went into the consulting world after he got his MBA. We both graduated together, and he told me years ago, he said, responsiveness is cheap currency. And what he means by that is it's really easy to do, but it's really valuable. If you can just be responsive all the time to people, doesn't mean you have to always give them an answer, but just to say, hey, I got that, I'll get back to you. It's a great way to build credibility fast. So those are all ways for people, listeners, to think about trust. I mean, we can dive into that formula more, but I think it's so simple and easy to think about it when you're trying to build trust with another person or even your team.
I thank you for sharing it. I love it, and I think it really it just lays out and I like what you've added and what you're multiplying. Because if we took any one of those out, authenticity, vulnerability, or credibility, it just wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't equal trust.
Yeah.
And I think the credibility piece, my off the top of my head thought on it is it's overlooked quite a bit. That it's the responsiveness, right? Being reliable, knowing what you're doing, things like that, that is often overlooked as a really important component of trust, the follow through. And I think it's huge.
It really is.
Yeah.
And particularly for managers and leaders. I mean, how often have I heard stories, and we probably both have experienced it, where you sit down with somebody, a manager or a leader, you voice your concerns, and they're very empathetic, and they listen, they say, oh, yes, we're definitely going to do something about that. Mm-hmm. And then nothing ever happens. And that's hurting. That's credibility going down because they didn't follow up. They didn't do what they promised they were going to do. And that's how you build credibility. But you can also lose it as a leader if you don't fulfill your promises.
And for some reason, I leaders I've run into who are need to shore up that particular skill or that area, I find sometimes, and I'm thinking really well-intentioned people, right, who care about their company and care about their people, but they'll sort of talk themselves out of it. Well, I was just incredibly busy. We had a crisis. It was this, it was that. And they miss the importance of the incredibly negative impact on other people when they don't respond or they don't follow through, even to say, I'm sorry, I can't follow through right now, right? That's better than not saying anything at all.
Right, because I love your example, Claudette. That's beautiful, because what happens is, let's say you can't do it, but if you fall on your sword and say, I'm so sorry, I wasn't able to do it, and I kind of dropped the ball, then the points you don't get for credibility because you didn't do it are now reallocated to vulnerability. So you still get points on the trust equation versus not doing anything at all or saying anything at all. Then you lose points across the board.
You lose. That's a great point. Yeah, it goes to vulnerability, right? I said I was going to do this. I couldn't. Here's what I'm going to do instead. And
exactly. So the 5 points you would have gotten over there on credibility, now you've moved it 5 points to vulnerability. Now,
and
of those
authenticity too, right?
And authenticity, you're right. It moves it to that side of the equation. So it's still there. It's just multiplied on the other side. But I will say vulnerability of the three is the hardest for most leaders. That's the one they don't like.
I would imagine, right? That just opens you up in a whole different way.
It feels like weakness because so they associate it with weakness. I'm going to lose power, rather than it actually makes you more compelling. It makes people trust you more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's an invitation. It's an invitation. Let's do it together. Versus, I'm this almighty, all-knowing leader, which is not as compelling to us.
Well, especially when folks in organizations are watching that leader and watching his or her blind spots, right? And just wishes someone would give that leader some feedback, right? on what maybe they could do differently, right? That they might just be blind to, right? They're coming from an honest place. They literally don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And that kind of vulnerability and authenticity coming from, someone in an organization toward a leader, this has been what I've seen, will sometimes allow that leader to then really become authentic or vulnerable themselves. So it's an interesting two-way street.
Yeah, it really is. I agree.
So we're going to be wrapping up the show in just a second here. Is there if you had a sentence to share with listeners, just a quick thought, what would you want to leave them with today?
Oh, so many things. I would go back to our earlier comments. I think what listeners can ask themselves right now is, how effective am I right now at driving clarity?
Okay.
How good am I doing that? Because clarity falls on the side of our spectrum of operational and transactional, and we need that. So how good am I doing at that? Either with others, my team, even at home. And then the second one I would leave them with is, how good am I doing at being curious and building those relationships?
Clarity and curiosity. That's awesome.
Because curiosity drops on the other side of our spectrum underneath the relational. So you can strengthen both sides of those muscles by doing those two.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Brandon, for being on the show today. Really, really appreciate everything you've shared, all of your wisdom and insights. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Claudette. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. And thanks to all the listeners for tuning into Cultural Brilliance Radio. As always, we had a great time. Please join us every second and fourth Friday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. See you back here in a couple of weeks.
You've been listening to the hit show Cultural Brilliance Radio, the DNA of organizational excellence with Claudette Rowley. Conversations that are transforming the world of culture and business. You can download this podcast and find out more about Claudette and her breakthrough work at ClaudetteRowley.com. Please contact Claudette and find out how you can create a brilliant culture.